You wake in darkness. Not the darkness of your room, but something older. Stone cold and heavy with the weight of centuries. The air tastes of damp earth and torch smoke, and somewhere in the distance, you hear the muffled roar of thousands of voices pressing down through layers of rock and timber. Your eyes adjust slowly, and you realize you're standing in a narrow corridor carved from volcanic stone, the walls close enough to touch on both sides. A single oil lamp flickers on a ledge, casting long shadows that dance and twist like living things. This is the Hypogeum, the underworld beneath the Colosseum. You take a step forward, and the sound of your sandal against stone echoes strangely, swallowed almost immediately by the thickness of the air. The corridor stretches ahead into deeper shadow, and behind you, the same. You have no memory of how you arrived here, only the certainty that you cannot go back. So you move forward, one hand trailing along the rough-cut wall, feeling the tool marks left by slaves who carved this labyrinth 2,000 years ago. The smell hits you next. Sweat, old and sour, layered over something animal and wild. Straw and dung and fear. You pass an iron gate set into the wall, and through the bars, you glimpse a cage. Empty now, but the floor is scored with claw marks. Deep gouges in the stone. Whatever lived here was massive. Another sound rises beneath the distant crowd noise. A mechanical groaning, wood against wood, rope straining under weight. Somewhere in this maze of tunnels, a lift is moving. You follow the sound, your pulse quickening despite the slow, deliberate pace of your steps. The corridor opens into a larger chamber, and here the ceiling rises higher, supported by thick wooden beams black with age and smoke. Torches line the walls in iron brackets, and in the center of the room you see it. A massive wooden platform, ropes and pulleys attached to a vertical shaft that disappears into darkness above. A slave stands beside the mechanism, his back to you, pulling rhythmically on a thick rope. His shoulders glisten with sweat despite the coolness of the underground. He doesn't turn, doesn't acknowledge your presence, and you realize with a strange certainty that he cannot see you. You are a ghost here, a shadow watching a world that ended long ago. The platform begins to rise, groaning and creaking, and as it ascends, a thin shaft of light breaks through from above. Not much, just enough to turn the darkness grey. You hear it now more clearly. The crowd, not a roar anymore, but distinct voices, thousands of them, speaking Latin in accents you somehow understand. Laughter, arguments, the cry of vendors selling wine and roasted meat. You move toward a different passage, this one sloping upward, and the air begins to change. Warmer now, drier. The torch smoke gives way to something else, dust and sunlight, and the faint, sweet smell of saffron water being sprayed into the air above. The stone beneath your feet transitions from rough-hewn to smooth, worn by countless footsteps over centuries of use. The passage opens onto a stairway, and you climb. Each step brings more light, more sound, until finally you emerge into the open air, and the world explodes around you. The Colosseum rises above and around you like a mountain made by human hands. Tier upon tier of stone seating, arching upward in perfect symmetry, packed with people as far as you can see. 50,000 faces, maybe more. The scale of it is impossible. You've seen photographs, read descriptions, but nothing prepared you for this. The sheer, overwhelming presence of so many bodies in one place, all focused on the oval arena below. You find yourself standing in one of the upper sections, the stone seats still cool from the night before, but warming quickly under the morning sun. You sit, and the stone is hard beneath you, unforgiving. Around you, Romans settle into their places. A family to your left, a father pointing something out to his young son, both wearing togas despite the heat. To your right, a group of men passing a wineskin, already drunk though it's barely past dawn. Further down, women in colourful stolas fan themselves with painted silk, their jewelry catching the light. The arena floor spreads below, covered in fresh sand that glows almost white in the Mediterranean sun. The sand is perfectly raked, unmarked, waiting. At the far end, enormous doors stand closed, painted red and gold, and above them, in the imperial box, purple silk ripples in a breeze you cannot feel down here. A horn sounds, long and low, vibrating through the stone beneath you. The crowd noise drops to a murmur, then to something close to silence. 50,000 people holding their breath. The doors open. They move slowly, deliberately, pulled by unseen hands in the tunnels below. The darkness beyond them seems to pulse, and then figures emerge into the light. Men, perhaps 24 of them, walking in a loose formation. They wear minimal armor, leather guards on their arms, simple tunics. Some carry spears, others, nothing at all. These are not gladiators. You understand this without being told. These men move wrong. Their steps are uncertain, their heads turning constantly, looking for something they cannot find. Behind them, handlers in dark robes use long poles to keep them moving forward. And now you see the chains, ankle chains, linking them together in a shuffling line. The condemned. Another horn, higher pitched this time, and from gates along the arena's perimeter, animals emerge. A lion first, its mane dark and matted, blinking in the sudden brightness. Then another, and another. 5 in total, walking with the patient, measured pace of creatures who have been starved and are now being offered food. You want to look away. Some part of you knows you should, but your eyes remain fixed on the arena floor as the distance between the two groups closes. The crowd around you leans forward as one, a collective intake of breath. The men in the arena have stopped moving. Some raise their weapons, pathetic things really, against animals like these. Others simply stand, frozen in place by terror so complete it has moved beyond panic into something else. Acceptance, perhaps. The first lion charges, and the sound it makes is nothing like you imagined. Not a roar, but something between a cough and a scream that seems to come from deep in the earth itself. The crowd erupts, not in horror, in excitement, in joy. The noise washes over you like a physical force, and you realize with a sick certainty that this is what they came for. This moment, this transformation of human beings into meat. You close your eyes. When you open them again, the sun has moved. Hours have passed in what felt like seconds. The arena floor is no longer white. The sand has turned dark in patches, raked but not replaced. The bodies are gone, dragged away through side gates by men with hooks and ropes, but the memory of them lingers in the air like smoke. The crowd has changed too, quieter now, sated. Some are eating bread and olives and strips of salted fish. Others doze in the heat, their heads tipped back against the stone. The morning's entertainment is over, and now comes the waiting, the lull before the main event. You stand, your legs stiff from sitting, and begin to walk along the curved corridor that runs behind the seating. Here in the shade, it's cooler, and you can breathe more easily. You pass beneath arches that frame perfect circles of sky, and you realize the engineering of this place is as impressive as its size. Every curve, every angle designed to channel crowds efficiently, to prevent crushing, to allow 50,000 people to enter and exit in minutes if needed. You find a spot where you can see both the arena and the city beyond. Rome spreads out in all directions, a sea of red tile roofs and white marble temples, the Tiber River cutting through it like a silver vein. Smoke rises from countless hearth fires. The distant sound of hammers on metal drifts up from the metalworking district. Somewhere out there, life continues as it always has. Merchants haggling, children playing, bread being baked in clay ovens. But here, in this monument to spectacle and death, time moves differently. You turn away from the view and descend deeper into the corridors, following the slope downward, where the air grows cooler and the noise dims. The stone beneath your feet is worn smooth by countless thousands who have walked this path before you. Vendors have set up in alcoves along the way. Men selling watered wine from clay amphorae. Women offering small cakes dusted with honey and sesame seeds. The smell of roasted nuts drifts past, mixing with something else. Incense, perhaps, or perfumed oils worn by the wealthy patrons who brush past you without apology. You keep walking until the corridor opens onto a stairwell that spirals down into darkness. There's no sign here, no warning, but you descend anyway, drawn by curiosity and something else you can't name. The steps are narrow and steep, carved from the same travertine stone as the rest of the structure, and with each turn the light fades. Above you, the roar of the crowd continues, muffled now, transformed into a rhythmic pulse that you feel more than hear. At the bottom, the stairwell opens into a tunnel. Not a corridor like the ones above, but something different, lower, rougher. The ceiling here is barely taller than your head, and the walls press close on either side. The air is thick with moisture and heat, as if you've descended into the belly of some enormous beast. Torches burn in iron brackets every few meters, their flames guttering in a breeze. You cannot feel but must exist because the smoke moves sideways, hugging the ceiling before dissipating into darkness. This is the hypogem, the world beneath the world. You hear them before you see them. Voices echoing off stone, sharp commands in Latin, grunts of effort, the metallic screech of gears turning. You move toward the sound, and the tunnel widens into a chamber where men work in the half-light. They're stripped to the waist, their skin slick with sweat that gleams in the torchlight. 8 of them surround a massive wooden capstan, their hands gripping thick ropes as they walk in circles, turning the mechanism that raises platforms from this buried realm to the arena floor above. One of the men glances at you but doesn't stop working. His face is blank, emptied of expression by repetition and exhaustion. You realize he probably doesn't care why you're here. Visitors sometimes wander down from the upper levels, drawn by morbid curiosity or lost in the maze of passages. He turns his attention back to the rope, and you watch the muscles in his shoulders bunch and release with each step. Above them, something moves. A cage, suspended from chains, rising slowly through a vertical shaft. You can't see what's inside, but you hear it. A low rumbling growl that vibrates through the stone beneath your feet. One of the big cats. Lion or leopard, it doesn't matter. What matters is that somewhere up there, beyond the circle of light cast by the torches, a trap door will open. The cage will emerge through the sand like a dark bloom. The animal will be released into sunlight it hasn't seen in days or weeks. And what happens next is already decided. You move away from the chamber, deeper into the tunnels. They branch and split in a bewildering network, and you understand now why guides are sometimes employed to lead important visitors through this labyrinth. Without them, you could wander for hours, lost among the storage rooms and holding pens. The narrow passages where slaves and condemned criminals wait for their moment above. You pass a cell where men sit in silence. Some stare at the floor, others at the wall. One meets your eyes, and in his gaze you see something that makes you look away. Not fear, not even resignation, just emptiness. He's already gone, even though his body remains. When they lead him up to the arena, he'll walk without resistance, because there's nothing left inside him to resist with. Further along, you find the animal pens. The smell hits you first. Urine and feces and wet fur, concentrated in the humid air until it becomes almost solid. The cages are arranged in rows, stacked too high in some places, and from within them come sounds that raise the hair on your arms. A lion paces in a space too small for pacing, its shoulders rolling under golden fur matted with filth. In another cage, a bear stands on its hind legs, its massive paws gripping the bars as it rocks from side to side. Its eyes are filmed over with cataracts, but it knows you're there. It can smell you. A handler passes by, carrying a bucket that sloshes with bloody meat. He doesn't look at the animals as he feeds them, shoving chunks through the bars with a long pole, careful to keep his hands well clear. The big cats lunge at the food with desperate hunger, and you understand then that they're not fed regularly. They're kept on the edge of starvation, just hungry enough to be dangerous, just desperate enough to attack anything that moves. You climb back up, following a different stairwell that rises through the stone like a spiral of smoke. Your legs ache from the ascent, and by the time you emerge into daylight again, your eyes water from the sudden brightness. You're back in the seating area, but higher now, near the upper tiers where the stone gives way to wooden benches and the crowd presses together shoulder to shoulder. Here, the atmosphere is different. Louder, more frantic. These are the cheap seats, the sections where common citizens sit, where slaves stand in the shadows behind their masters, where pickpockets work the dense crowds with practiced ease. Someone jostles you from behind, and you feel a hand brush your side, checking for a coin purse that isn't there. You turn, but the person is already gone, absorbed back into the press of bodies. A trumpet sounds, 3 short blasts that cut through the noise and bring a sudden hush to the crowd. You push forward until you can see the arena floor again, and what you see makes you stop breathing. The sand has been raked clean during the intermission, fresh and white, as if nothing has happened here today. As if the morning's blood has been erased like writing on wax. Gates open on opposite sides of the arena. Not the small gates used for the animals, but the grand entrances reserved for the main event. Figures emerge from the darkness beyond, and even from this distance, you can see the sunlight catching on metal. Armor, helmets. The distinctive shapes of weapons you've only heard described but never seen. Gladiators. They move in pairs, walking with the careful balance of men who know how to fight while wearing 30 pounds of bronze and iron. The crowd erupts, not the excited chaos of the morning, but something more focused, more intense. These are the athletes they've been waiting for, the professionals, the ones whose names are painted on walls throughout the city, whose faces appear on clay lamps and drinking cups. They line up in the center of the arena, 20 men in total, divided into pairs according to their fighting styles. Murmillo against Thryax, Retiarius against Secutor, each combination carefully chosen to create the most dramatic spectacle, the most interesting tactical puzzles for the crowd to dissect and debate. One of the fighters removes his helmet, and you're surprised by how young he looks. 20 maybe, 22 at most. His hair is cropped short, his face unmarked by the scars you expected. He scans the crowd with eyes that reveal nothing, then replaces the helmet and turns to face his opponent. The trumpet sounds again. Once. Final. And they begin. What strikes you first is not the violence, but the technique. These men are not brawling or flailing wildly at each other. They're moving, with precision, testing each other's defenses, looking for openings the way a sculptor looks for the line hidden in a block of marble. The crowd understands this. They watch in near silence, broken only by occasional shouts of encouragement or gasps when a particularly skillful maneuver unfolds. The Retiarius, the net fighter, circles his opponent with flowing steps, the trident held low, the weighted net gathered in his left hand. His adversary, the Secutor, advances behind a large rectangular shield, sword arm cocked and ready. They move like dancers who know each other's steps, who have practiced this choreography until it became instinct. The net flies out in a silver arc. The Secutor raises his shield, but the net wraps around the top edge, and for a moment he's trapped, fighting to tear it free while the Retiarius closes with his trident. 3 sharp prongs aimed at the exposed throat. The Secutor drops low, and the trident scrapes across his helmet with a sound like nails on slate. He surges forward, driving his shoulder into the Retiarius's chest. and both men go down in a tangle of limbs and equipment. They separate and rise. No blood has been drawn. Not yet. But the crowd is leaning forward now, sensing that the feeling out period is over. The real fight is about to begin. You watch as the afternoon sun crawls across the sky, marking time with the shadows that stretch and shift across the arena floor. Pairs of gladiators fight and rest and fight again. Some matches end quickly, a blade finding a gap in armor, a fall that turns into submission, a raised finger from a defeated fighter asking for mercy. Other bouts drag on for what feels like hours, both men exhausted, barely able to lift their weapons, held upright by pride and training, and the relentless noise of 50,000 people demanding more. The sun hangs lower now, painting the western wall of the Colosseum in shades of amber and rust. The young fighter's helmet clatters to the sand. He doesn't fall. He sinks like a puppet whose strings have been cut all at once. His opponent stands over him, chest heaving, sword still raised. The crowd holds its breath. Every eye in the Colosseum fixes on the fallen gladiator's right hand. It rises slowly. One finger extends toward the sky. The gesture is small, almost delicate, but it carries the weight of a life hanging in the balance. The defeated fighter has just asked the crowd for mercy. His fate now belongs to 50,000 voices that will decide whether he walks out of this arena or is carried out. You've been watching for hours, but this moment cuts through the exhaustion. This is why they come. Not just for the spectacle of combat, but for this, the power to judge, to grant life or take it, to play God from a seat of sun-warmed stone. The crowd erupts into a cacophony of competing opinions. Some sections are screaming for mercy, others for blood. You can't tell which is louder. The noise wraps around the arena like a physical thing, pressing down on your chest, making it hard to draw breath. People are standing now, waving cloths, pumping fists, turning to argue with neighbors they were laughing with an hour ago. The emperor rises from his seat. The noise doesn't stop, but it shifts, becomes more focused, more directed. All those voices are now aimed at one man in purple robes who has probably been half asleep for the last hour, bored by contests he's seen 100 times before. But he's paying attention now. He has to. The crowd demands it. His thumb appears above the rail of the imperial box. You can't see which way it points from where you're sitting, but you know what it means from the crowd's reaction. Half the Colosseum roars with approval. The other half groans and curses. The defeated gladiator's life has been spared, but barely, and probably only because the emperor is in a good mood today, or because this particular fighter has a following that includes wealthy patrons who would be annoyed to see their investment die in the sand. The victor lowers his sword. He offers his hand to his fallen opponent, pulling him to his feet. They embrace briefly, a strange moment of humanity in the midst of choreographed violence, and then walk together toward the gate of life. Both will fight again. Both will face this same moment again. And eventually, inevitably, one of them will face it when the crowd is less forgiving, or when the emperor's thumb points in a different direction. The slaves swarm onto the sand with their rakes and baskets. They work with practiced efficiency, smoothing out the churned-up surface, removing broken equipment, occasionally stopping to pick up something small that glints in the late afternoon light. A piece of armor, maybe, or a tooth. The Colosseum has seen enough bloodshed today that the sand has turned from golden to rust brown in patches, despite the constant raking. Tomorrow, fresh sand will be brought in. Clean. Ready. As if none of this ever happened. You realize how thirsty you are. Your throat feels like you've been swallowing dust for hours, which isn't far from the truth. The heat has been relentless, and even with the valerium, the massive awning that's been drawn across parts of the Colosseum to provide shade. The temperature inside feels like standing next to an open oven. Your lips are cracked. Your tunic clings to your back with sweat that never quite dries. Around you, people are pulling out water skins and passing them back and forth. Food appears from beneath benches. Bread, dried fruit, small pieces of cheese that have gone soft in the heat. The smell of it mingles with the other odours you've been breathing all day. Sweat, urine from the public toilets beneath the stands, the metallic tang of blood that seems to hang in the air even when the sand has been raked clean. A vendor works his way along your row, selling cups of watered wine from a clay jug strapped to his back. He moves with the confidence of someone who's done this 1,000 times, never spilling a drop despite the press of bodies and the uneven footing. You fish a coin from your pouch and buy a cup. The wine is thin and warm and tastes faintly of the clay it was stored in, but it soothes your throat and you drink it down in 3 long swallows. The trumpet sounds again, different this time, longer, more ceremonial. The crowd quiets, sensing something special is about to happen. You watch as attendants wheel large wooden boards into the arena, each one painted with names and numbers, fight cards, the program for what's coming next, the final matches, the ones people have been waiting for all day. Names you recognize appear on the boards. Flamma, victor of 41 contests, 21 times winner. The crowd loves him for his scars and his refusal to retire, even though he's been offered the wooden sword of freedom 4 times now. He fights because fighting is all he knows, and the arena is the only place where his life makes sense. His opponent's name draws an equal roar. Astyanax, younger, faster, a Thracian captured during the campaigns in the north and sold to a Lanista who saw potential in those quick hands and cold eyes. He's undefeated in 17 matches, though half of those ended in draws that left both fighters alive and the crowd frustrated. This won't be a draw. The boards make that clear. This is a fighter digitum. To the death, no mercy, no appeal to the emperor. One of these men will walk out of the Colosseum tonight. The other will leave through the gate of death, dragged by hooks to a room where his armor will be stripped and his body thrown into a cart bound for the mass graves outside the city walls. They enter from opposite gates. Flamma moves with the careful steps of a man whose body has been broken and repaired too many times to trust anymore. His left knee doesn't quite bend right. His shield arm carries a network of white scars that look like tree roots spreading across his skin. But his eyes are clear and his grip on his gladius is steady. Astyanax stalks into the arena like a predator scenting blood. His armor is polished to a mirror shine, a deliberate choice, something to catch the light and dazzle an opponent at the wrong moment. He carries a small shield and a curved seeker, the blade favored by Thracian fighters, designed for hooking behind an enemy's guard. They salute the emperor. They salute the crowd. And then they turn to face each other across 30 feet of sand that might as well be the distance between life and death. The trumpet sounds. One note. Final as a closing door. They don't rush at each other. This isn't the clumsy desperation of the morning's condemned prisoners or the theatrical showmanship of the early afternoon bouts. This is 2 professionals at the peak of their craft, and they know that the first mistake will be the last. Flamma advances behind his shield, presenting a wall of wood and bronze that gives Astyanax no clean line of attack. The younger fighter circles, patient, looking for an angle, a moment when the shield drops a fraction, or when Flamma's bad knee forces a compensating shift in weight. Minutes pass. The crowd grows restless. They want action, blood, drama. What they're getting is a chess match played with swords, and most of them don't have the experience to appreciate the subtle mastery on display. Then Astyanax feints left and cuts right, and his seeker finds a gap between shield and breastplate. Blood appears on Flamma's side, a dark line spreading across bronze. The crowd roars. First blood always brings them to their feet, but Flammer doesn't flinch. He pivots on his good leg and brings his gladius around in a tight arc that forces Astyanax to break contact and dance backward. They reset, breathing hard now, both understanding that the fight has truly begun. What follows is brutal and beautiful in equal measure. Flammer fights with the economy of motion that comes from knowing his body has limits it can't exceed. Every strike is measured. Every block is positioned to use the opponent's momentum against him. Astyanax fights with youth's confidence in its own immortality, pressing attacks that would exhaust a lesser fighter, withdrawing before Flammer can counter, staying mobile because mobility is the only advantage he has against experience. The wound in Flammer's side spreads. His tunic beneath the armor is soaked now, and you can see the way he's favoring that side, trying to minimize the bleeding while still maintaining his defense. But he's hurt Astyanax too. A deep cut across the forearm that makes the younger fighter's grip on his sicker uncertain. They separate again. Both men are bleeding, both are exhausted. The sun has dropped low enough that the shadow of the western wall has crept across half the arena floor, and they're fighting now in twilight, which makes every strike harder to read, every defense more uncertain. Astyanax commits to a final attack, coming in low and fast, trying to get under Flammer's guard before the older fighter can adjust. The Seeker flashes in the dying light, but Flammer has been waiting for this. He's been waiting for the moment when youth's impatience would overcome tactical sense. His shield drops, exposing his wounded side, a tempting target too good to resist. Astyanax takes the bait. His blade reaches for the opening, and Flammer's gladius, which had been hidden behind his shield, comes up in a short, brutal thrust that enters beneath Astyanax's ribs and finds something vital. The younger fighter's eyes go wide. His seeker falls from nerveless fingers. He tries to speak, but blood comes instead of words. Flammer catches him as he falls, lowering him almost gently to the sand that will be his final resting place. The Colosseum erupts. Not everyone cheers. Some are silent, watching as Astyanax's life drains into the earth. Others weep openly, moved by the tragedy of potential unfulfilled, by the waste of a fighter who might have been great. Flammer stands alone in the center of the arena, bleeding, exhausted, victorious. He doesn't celebrate. He barely acknowledges the crowd. He simply stands there, sword hanging at his side, looking down at the body of a man who might have killed him if fate had shifted by a single heartbeat. The slaves come with their hooks and their cart. Flammer walks toward the gate of life, and you watch him until he disappears into the darkness of the tunnel. 42 victories now, 22 times winner, and still no freedom, because freedom would mean leaving this place, and this place is all he has left. The tunnel is cooler than you expected, not cold, but a relief from the August heat that turns Rome into an oven. Your sandals scrape against stone that's been worn smooth by thousands of feet before yours, and the sound echoes off walls that curve away into darkness. Somewhere ahead, torchlight flickers against damp stone, throwing shadows that move like living things. You're not alone down here. The Hypogeum, this maze beneath the arena floor, is crowded with the machinery of spectacle. 8 slaves work a winch to your left, their muscles straining against the weight of whatever cage they're raising toward the surface. Their overseer counts the rhythm. 1, 2, 3, pull. 1, 2, 3, pull. The wooden beam groans with each rotation. You can hear similar sounds echoing from other chambers, a symphony of effort and engineering that no one in the seats above will ever appreciate. The smell hits you in waves. Human sweat, concentrated and sour. Animal musk that speaks of fear and confinement. Smoke from oil lamps that never quite dispels the deeper odors that have soaked into this stone over decades. Something sharp, and medicinal from the direction you know leads to the sanitarium, where surgeons work in perpetual dim light on men who might fight again if their luck holds. A gate opens somewhere, metal scraping stone, and you hear the first real roar of the crowd. It's muted down here, filtered through tons of stone and wood, but unmistakable. 60,000 voices united in anticipation. The sound makes your chest tighten, though you're not the one who'll walk onto that sand. You climb. The stairs are narrow and steep, designed for efficiency rather than comfort. Your hand finds the wall for balance, and the stone is warm even here, holding yesterday's heat and the heat of all the yesterdays before. The roar grows louder with each step, acquiring texture and dimension. You can distinguish now between the constant background hum and the sudden surges when something happens that captures collective attention. The light changes. The dimness of the hypodium gives way to something brighter, harsher. You emerge into the cavea, the seating area, and the scale of this place hits you with physical force. It's one thing to know the Colosseum holds 60,000 people. It's another to stand among them and feel the mass of humanity arrayed in tears that rise toward a sky that seems impossibly far away. The architecture is deliberate, designed to impress, and it succeeds. Every sightline calculated, every arch positioned to frame something significant. The senators sit in their marble seats at the lowest level, names carved into stone like declarations of permanence. Above them, tier after tier of citizens arranged by status and wealth, a social hierarchy made visible in vertical space. You find your spot on a wooden bench high in the upper section. The stone is hot beneath you, radiating the day's accumulated warmth. Around you, conversation fills the air in a dozen dialects. A woman to your left shares bread with her companion. 3 men behind you argue about the afternoon's matched pairs, their opinions strong and their voices stronger. Vendors move through the crowd with refreshments, their calls practiced and musical. The arena floor stretches below, deceptively simple from this height. Fresh sand covers yesterday's blood. The oval is perfect, a geometric statement of control. The walls that separate sand from spectators are higher than they appear from up here, engineered to keep everything contained and everyone safe. The senators need those protections. Sometimes violence has ideas of its own. A fanfare cuts through the noise, not subtle. Trumpets and horns announcing that the day's program will begin. The crowd settles, not into silence but into a focused hum of expectation. The gates at the far end open and figures emerge onto the sand. The morning belongs to the Gladiators, the beast hunters. They enter without the heavy armor of gladiators, carrying spears and nets, moving with the cautious confidence of men who've studied their prey. Behind them, from trapdoors you can barely see from this distance, the first animals appear. A bear, massive and disoriented by the sudden light. It stands on its hind legs, testing the air with its snout, and the crowd responds with a sound that's part excitement, part bloodlust. The Gladiators circle, their movements choreographed by training and necessity. This isn't random chaos. This is practiced art, dangerous art, where the margin between success and disaster can be measured in heartbeats. The bear charges. One hunter dodges left while another throws his net, and for a moment the massive animal is tangled, confused, vulnerable. Spears flash in the sunlight. The bear roars, a sound that carries even up here, and then it's over. The first kill of the day, accomplished with efficiency that speaks to countless repetitions. More animals follow. A leopard that moves like liquid shadow. Wolves that work together until they don't. An ostrich, improbably, that provides comic relief with its awkward running and the hunter's exaggerated fear. The crowd loves the variety. They've seen lions before, seen bears, but each presentation offers something new in the details of pursuit and capture and death. You watch a Gladiator take down a boar with a single spear thrust, perfectly placed between the shoulder blades as the animal charged. The skill is undeniable. The courage is real, even if the outcome is predetermined by numbers and preparation. These men are athletes of a brutal sport, and the crowd appreciates the artistry, even as they crave the blood. The sun climbs higher, the stone seats grow hotter, attendants move through the upper tiers with amphoras of water, and you accept a cup gratefully. The liquid is cool, drawn from cisterns deep enough to resist the day's heat. Around you, people fan themselves with whatever's available. Some have brought palm fronds, others simply endure. Midday brings the executions, and the atmosphere shifts. This isn't sport. This is justice made public, punishment transformed into spectacle. The condemned enter through gates that will never open for them again. They wear no armor, carry no weapons. The crowd's energy changes, becomes something darker and more primal. These are criminals, you're told, murderers, traitors, runaway slaves. The worst of society, being removed from it in the most public way possible. A lion appears through a trap door, its movement careful, predatory. The condemned man tries to run, but there's nowhere to go. The oval is perfect and pitiless. What happens next is quick, which is its only mercy. The crowd responds with approval, but it's different from the morning's enthusiasm. This is satisfaction of a different kind, the comfort of seeing order restored through ancient ritual. More follow. A woman who killed her husband is dragged by a bull. A thief is given to the bears. A Christian who refused to recant faces the teeth of a leopard. Each death is efficient, final, meant to serve as warning and as entertainment. You watch because everyone watches, because not watching would mark you as different, as soft, as not properly Roman. But you're grateful when it ends. The afternoon belongs to the gladiators, and the energy transforms again. This is what most of the crowd came for. This is the main event. The gladiators enter in procession, walking with the particular swagger of men who've survived what kills most. They wear their armor like identity, Mumio with their fish-crested helmets, Thraex with their curved swords, Retiarii with their nets and tridents. Each type represents a different philosophy of combat, a different answer to the question of how to kill without being killed. The first pair is announced, a Secutor against a Retiarius, the classic matchup, heavy armor and direct attack versus mobility and reach. They salute the Emperor's box, empty today, but protocol demands recognition, and then they begin. What surprises you is the patience of it. You expected fury and quick death. What you get is chess played with swords and nets. The Retiarius circles, keeping distance, flicking his net in feints that force reactions. The Secutor advances methodically, shield high, waiting for the mistake that will let him close. They're both professionals. They both want to live. Death may come, but it won't come from carelessness. The net flashes out for real. The Secutor's shield comes up to catch it, but the trident is already moving, probing for the gap between shield and helmet. He twists, takes the blow on his shoulder guard, and surges forward in the moment when the Retiarius is overextended. His gladius seeks flesh. The crowd erupts, not for death. The blow didn't land clean, but for skill, for the perfectly timed counter, for the evidence that these men have earned their positions through talent and survival. The fighters separate, both breathing hard, both bleeding from minor cuts, and the dance begins again. This continues for hours, pair after pair. Some fights end quickly when a mistake becomes fatal. Others stretch on until exhaustion forces resolution. The sand soaks up blood and sweat in equal measure, and between matches, slaves rake it smooth again, preparing the stage for the next performance. The sun drops toward the western rim of the amphitheater, throwing long shadows across the arena floor. The crowd begins to thin, not everyone, but enough that you can feel the change. The final pair of the day finishes their match with mutual exhaustion. both granted reprieve by the crowd's thumbs. They help each other off the sand, and the gates close behind them. The games are over. Slowly, in waves, 60,000 people stand and stretch and begin the long descent toward the exits. The vomitoria, those perfectly engineered passages, will empty this massive crowd in minutes, a feat of planning that rivals anything that happened on the sand. You join the flow, moving down and out, back into the streets of Rome where vendors still call and carts still rumble and life continues as if nothing extraordinary just occurred. Behind you, the Colosseum settles into evening silence. The sand cools. The stone releases its heat. Somewhere in the hypogeum, slaves are cleaning cages and sharpening weapons for the next games, whenever those might be. The dead have been carried away, the wounded are being sewn back together, and tomorrow Rome will wake and go about its business until the next time the trumpets sound. But survival in the Colosseum wasn't just about what happened on the sand during the games. The real danger, the grinding threat that never stopped, lived in the spaces between spectacle, in the waiting, in the preparation, in the everyday machinery of death that turned beneath marble and travertine, invisible to the crowds, but inescapable for anyone caught in its gears. You wake in darkness, not the clean darkness of night, but the thick, breathing darkness of underground chambers where torchlight dies before it reaches the ceiling. The Ludus, the gladiator school, feels like a prison because it is one. The cells are small, barely wide enough to lie down. Stone walls press close on all sides. Through the bars, you can see other cells, other men waking to the same realization you face every morning. Today might be the day. The guards unlock your cell before dawn. Shackles go on. They always do, even for free volunteers who chose this life over execution. Trust is not a commodity the Lannister trades in. You shuffle out with the others, chain links clicking against stone, and make your way to the training yard where the real work begins. Training is where gladiators are made or broken, and it never stops. Your Lannister, your owner, your coach, the man who decides whether you live or die, watches from the shade while you drill. Hour after hour. Wooden swords against wooden posts. Footwork patterns until your legs burn. Shield work until your shoulder goes numb. The Rudies, the wooden training sword, becomes an extension of your arm. You learn to read opponents from the shift of weight, the angle of a shield, the breath pattern that betrays exhaustion. The other men in the yard represent every type you'll face. The Murmillo with his fish-crested helmet, training with heavy rectangular shield and straight sword. The Thryax with his curved seeker, learning to strike around defences. The Retiarius without armour, all speed and net technique, the most vulnerable and therefore the most desperate. You watch them all. You learn from them all, because one day you'll have to kill one of them, or they'll kill you. Breakfast comes mid-morning, not the feast you might imagine, but the reality that keeps you alive. Barley porridge, thick and glutinous, beans, bread, occasionally cheese or eggs, but meat is rare. The ancient writer Pliny called gladiators hordeari, barley men, and the name stuck because it's accurate. You eat carbohydrates in staggering quantities. 70–80% of your diet is grain. At first this seems wrong. Warriors should eat meat, should build muscle on protein and fat. But the veterans explain the logic, and you learn it in your own flesh as months pass. The grain makes you soft around the middle, not fat exactly, but padded. A layer of subcutaneous fat builds up beneath your skin, and that layer saves lives. A sword that cuts through lean muscle severs tendons and arteries. A sword that cuts through fat finds resistance, slows down, stops short of vital structures. Your armour made of your own body, and the fuel for that armour is barley. After morning training comes the ash drink. You watch the first time with suspicion as veterans mix wood ash into water and drink it down without complaint. The taste is exactly as terrible as you expect. Bitter, alkaline, coating your throat. But this too has purpose. The ash is rich in calcium and minerals that strengthen bones, help them heal after the hairline fractures that accumulate from shield impacts and training accidents. The Romans don't understand biochemistry, but they understand results. Gladiators who drink the ash have bones that mend faster, so you drink. Afternoon training is different, heavier. The lanista pairs you with partners who push harder, who exploit weaknesses, who don't stop when you stumble. This is where you learn the difference between drilling and fighting. The wooden weapons still can't kill you. Not easily, but they can break ribs, dislocate shoulders, split skin over cheekbones. You collect bruises like medals, each one a lesson in what not to do next time. The ludus has a hospital wing, and you see it more than you'd like. Galen, the famous physician, made his reputation treating gladiators. His techniques, cleaning wounds with wine-soaked linen, suturing deep muscle layers, ligating severed vessels, sound almost modern. The opium-based anesthetic they use for serious operations works, though not well enough that you don't remember screaming. The survival rate surprises you. Men who should die from gut wounds, from severed arteries, from compound fractures, somehow live. The doctors here have learned through volume. They see injuries that would kill a farmer or merchant, and they've developed ways to handle them because the investment in each gladiator is too high to waste on preventable death. Between training sessions, you learn the other skills that keep you alive. How to read a crowd, because the crowd's mood determines whether you get the thumbs up or the death order when you're beaten. How to move with dramatic flair, because style matters as much as substance in the arena. How to recognize the signs that another gladiator is about to break, to give up, to make the mistake that ends the fight. How to manage pain, to keep fighting when your body screams at you to stop, because stopping means dying. The waiting is worse than training. Days stretch into weeks between fights, and during that time, you exist in a state of permanent tension. You know the games are coming. You know your name will be called. You don't know when. The uncertainty eats at you. Some men pray. Some men drink when they can get wine, though the guards mostly prevent it. Some men pick fights in the yard, desperate for any release of the pressure. Some men go quiet, retreating into themselves. And those are the ones who usually die first when the gates finally open. When your day comes, you know it from the moment you wake. The guards are different, more formal, less casual. The lanista appears personally to inspect you, checking your fitness, making sure his investment is ready for display. You're given better food that morning. Real meat, wine diluted with water, honey cakes. It's practical rather than kind. They want you at peak performance, but it feels like a last meal anyway. The preparation takes hours. Your armor is checked piece by piece. Every strap, every buckle, every rivet. The helmet fits snug, the padding inside stiff with old sweat and blood. Your shield has been repaired and repainted. Your sword, the real one now, sharp enough to shave with, gets a final honing. The lanista gives a speech you barely hear. Something about honor, about reputation, about making the ludus proud. What you actually hear is your own heartbeat. The walk from the ludus to the Colosseum happens through underground tunnels. The ludus magnus has a direct connection, a passage that lets gladiators move unseen beneath the streets of Rome. The tunnel is cool and damp, lit by torches that throw wild shadows on curved stone walls. Your footsteps echo. The sound of armor clinking, shields bumping against narrow walls, men breathing too fast. No one talks. There's nothing left to say. You emerge into the hypogeum, the underworld beneath the arena, and the reality of the place hits you like a physical force. It's hot as a furnace, humid, thick with smoke from the torches, and the smell of animals and human sweat accumulated over years. The noise is overwhelming. machinery creaking as slaves work the lifts, animals snarling and pacing in their cages, horns and drums coordinating the complex choreography of death. Above it all, muffled but constant, the roar of 60,000 voices waiting for blood. You wait in a holding cell with the other fighters scheduled for this session. Some pace, some sit with heads bowed, some pray to gods who may or may not care. The veterans have a distant look, already halfway into the combat trance that lets them function when the gates open. The novices shake, not all of them, but enough. You wonder which category you fall into, and you realize you've stopped shaking, not from courage, from acceptance. The weight stretches. Time becomes elastic, meaningless. Then the guards come. They check your bonds one final time, make sure your weapons are secure, and lead you to the base of one of the 80 vertical shafts that connect the hypogeum to the arena floor. You step onto the platform. 8 slaves begin cranking the winch. The platform rises, carrying you up through the earth, up toward the light and the sound and the moment when everything changes. The trapdoor above you opens. Sunlight floods down, blinding after the darkness below. The roar of the crowd increases exponentially, a wall of sound that seems to have physical presence. The platform locks into place, flush with the arena sound. You step off, blinking, shield up, and for the first time you see the Colosseum from the center. It's vast in a way that steals breath, tier upon tier of faces rising up and up, disappearing into the distance. More people than you've ever seen in one place. All of them watching you. All of them waiting to see what you'll do when the killing starts. The sand is raked smooth, pristine, ready to soak up whatever happens next. The sun beats down, reflecting off the marble seating, turning the whole structure into a bowl of light and heat and expectation. But you're not here to sightsee. Across the arena, another trapdoor has opened. Another fighter emerges, blinking in the same sun, carrying different weapons, but the same understanding. The crowd's noise peaks, then drops slightly as everyone leans forward to watch. This is the moment they came for, the moment you've trained for, the moment that will determine whether you walk out of here or get carried out in pieces. The official gives the signal. The fight begins, and everything you've learned, everything you've survived, comes down to the next few minutes on blood-stained sand beneath 60,000 watching eyes. You move instinctively, muscle memory taking over where conscious thought falters. Your opponent circles, testing angles, and you mirror the movement, keeping your shield between his weapon and your body. The first exchange is brief. Steel scrapes against bronze. You feel the impact through your arm, weight behind it, controlled but real. He's experienced. That matters. The crowd's noise shifts pitch, responding to the contact, and you understand, in that moment, how the sound will guide everything that follows. They're not just watching, they're participating. Their roar rises when blood is drawn, falls when fighters separate. They become a third presence in the arena, shaping the rhythm of violence through their collective voice. The heat is brutal. Reflected sunlight from marble seats turns the bowl into a furnace. Sweat runs into your eyes, stings, blurs vision at the worst moments. The sand beneath your feet is already warm, will be hot enough to burn by afternoon. Your opponent feints left, commits right, and you catch the strike on your shield's edge, deflecting rather than blocking because blocking wastes energy you can't spare. The exchange teaches you something about his style. He favors his right leg, shifts weight predictably. Small things, potentially useful things if you survive long enough to exploit them. The fight settles into a pattern. Probe, test, separate. Neither of you rushes because rushing gets you killed. The crowd wants spectacle, but you're not here to entertain. You're here to survive. Your trainer's voice echoes in memory, distant but clear. Watch the shoulders. They telegraph everything. The hips lie, the shoulders tell truth. You watch them now, reading intent in the slight rotation that precedes each strike. Block, deflect, counterattack. The sequence repeats, building a vocabulary of violence that both fighters understand. He's good. You might be better. The next few minutes will determine which assessment is accurate. Your legs start to burn. Not fatigue yet, just the acknowledgement that muscles are working hard will eventually fail if pushed too far. The sand shifts beneath each step, unstable, requiring constant adjustment. Footing matters as much as technique here. Lose your balance and the fight ends regardless of skill. You plant your back foot, drive forward with your shield, create space, reset. The crowd's volume increases. They've sensed a shift in momentum, real or imagined. Their expectations become pressure that presses down from all sides. The sun climbs higher. Shadows shrink. There's no escape from the light, nowhere cool to rest. Just endless exposure to heat and noise and the immediate problem of staying alive while someone tries very hard to kill you. Your opponent commits to a heavier attack, putting real force behind it, and you recognize the desperation in the choice. He's tiring faster than you, knows it, trying to end things before his strength fails completely. The strike comes hard, and you take it on the shield. Absorb the impact, feel the wood crack, but hold. Then you counter fast, exploiting the opening his aggression created. Your blade finds flesh. Not deep, not fatal, but enough. First blood. The crowd erupts. The noise becomes physical, pressing against your chest, making it harder to breathe. Your opponent staggers back, hand going to the wound on his shoulder, assessing damage. It's not fight ending, but it changes the equation. Pain and blood loss will compound his fatigue. The advantage shifts further in your direction. You see it in his eyes. He knows. But knowing doesn't change anything. The fight continues because there's no alternative except surrender. And surrender here means execution, unless the crowd grants mercy, which they rarely do. He comes at you again, more reckless now, swinging wide, trying for a decisive blow that will overcome the disadvantage. You sidestep, nearly lose footing in the loose sand, recover, strike at his exposed side. The blade cuts again, deeper this time. He grunts, stumbles, goes down on one knee. The crowd's noise reaches a crescendo. This is the moment they came for, the instant where outcome becomes inevitable, and the only question is how it ends. You stand over him, breathing hard, aware that 60,000 people are watching to see what you'll do next. The official approaches. The editor, representing the game's sponsor, will make the final call, but the crowd's voice matters. Thumbs begin to appear throughout the stands. Some up, some down. A referendum on whether this man deserves to live or die. You don't watch the crowd. You watch him. He's younger than you realized, maybe 20. Face pale beneath the blood and dust. He's not begging. That matters. The silence that falls is worse than the noise was. Everyone waiting. The editor consults with someone in the imperial box, then makes a gesture. Mercy. The crowd's reaction is mixed, but acceptance wins. He'll live. Today. You lower your weapon, step back, let the attendants rush forward to collect him. The fight is over. You've won. The walk back across the sand feels longer than the fight itself. Legs trembling now with released tension. The platform waits at the trap door, ready to lower you back into the hypergeum's darkness. You step on, begin the descent, and the crowd's noise fades as the wooden door closes above. The sudden dimness blinds you temporarily after the arena's brightness. Cool air rises from below, almost cold against your sun-baked skin. The platform settles with a mechanical clunk. Hands guide you off, toward the sanitarium, where physicians wait to assess damage. The medical chamber smells of wine and herbs. Galen himself isn't here, but men trained in his methods examine every cut and bruise with practiced efficiency. Your shield arm took the worst of it, bone-deep bruising that will hurt for days. They clean wounds with wine-soaked cloth, the alcohol burning in ways the actual fight didn't. Someone offers water and you drink greedily, realizing how dehydrated you've become. The physician stitches the deeper cuts, his needlework precise. "You'll fight again," he says. Not a question, a statement of fact. The wounds are painful but not crippling. You'll heal, you'll train, you'll return to the sand. This is the cycle. But not today. Today you're led to the holding area where successful fighters wait for processing. The space is crowded with others who survived their bouts. Some sit in silence. Some talk too much, adrenaline still coursing through their systems. You find a corner, sit with your back against stone that's always slightly damp, and let your mind go blank. The noise from above continues, muffled but constant. More fights, more deaths. The day's schedule grinding forward without pause. Hours pass. The light filtering down through the shafts changes angle, grows golden, begins to fade. The distant crowd noise diminishes as events conclude. Eventually you're released, led through tunnels that connect back to the Ludus, your training school. The walk is long. Your legs protest every step, but you make it. The gate opens. You pass through into the familiar courtyard where you've spent months training. Other fighters are here, some you know, some you've never seen. Tomorrow you'll train again. Next week or next month you'll return to the arena. The cycle continues until it doesn't, until the day you're not fast enough or strong enough or lucky enough, until the crowd's thumbs point down and mercy becomes irrelevant. But tonight, you're alive. You eat the simple meal provided, barley and vegetables and water. The food tastes better than it should. Everything tastes better after coming so close to not tasting anything ever again. You're given a cell, small, but yours, and you lie down on the narrow bed, feeling every bruise and cut protest the movement. Sleep should come easily after the day's exertion. Instead, you lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the fight in your mind. What you did right, what you did wrong, what might have happened if that first exchange had gone differently. The Colosseum still stands a few streets away, massive and silent now in the darkness. Tomorrow it will fill again with vendors and crowds and the machinery of death. But tonight it's empty, just stone and sand and moonlight. The smell of blood and fear fading in the cool night air. Somewhere in its depths, slaves are cleaning, preparing for the next games. Raking fresh sand, repairing trapdoors, feeding the animals that survived today's hunts. The engine of entertainment never stops completely. It only pauses, rests, waits for dawn and the next performance in Rome's greatest theatre of death. And you understand now, lying in your cell with fresh wounds burning, that this is what survival means here. Not victory, not glory, just the chance to do it again. To walk into that bowl of light, and sound and try to come out the other side. Day after day, fight after fight, until eventually you don't. You lie there in the darkness of your cell, and somewhere between waking and sleep, the sounds begin to shift. The stone walls seem to breathe. The distant echo of water dripping in the tunnels below becomes a rhythm, almost musical. Your wounds pulse in time with your heartbeat. A reminder that you're still here, still breathing, still part of this world that grinds men into dust and occasionally, inexplicably, lets them continue. The night deepens. Through the small window high in your cell, you can see stars appearing one by one in the square of sky visible above Rome. The same stars that look down on emperors and slaves, on senators and criminals, on every soul who ever passed through the Colosseum's gates and wondered if they would leave again. The city grows quiet around you. The vendors pack up their stalls. The taverns empty. The The great houses on the Palatine Hill dim their lamps. Even Rome, eternal and relentless, needs to rest. You think about the man you fought today, the one who knelt in the sand while 60,000 voices decided his fate. He's somewhere in this same building now, in his own cell, counting his own wounds, grateful for mercy that came from strangers who will never know his name. Tomorrow he'll wake to the same brutal routine, the same training, the same barley porridge, the same knowledge that eventually his luck will run out. Everyone's luck runs out here. It's not a question of if, only when, but that's tomorrow's concern. Tonight, you let your eyes close. The stone beneath you is hard but familiar. The air is cool. The sounds of the ludus settling into sleep surround you. The cough of another fighter. The shuffle of guards changing posts. The distant bark of a dog in the streets beyond the walls. These sounds become a lullaby, pulling you down into darkness that's softer than the hypogeum's shadows, warmer than the arena's merciless sun. In your dreams, you walk through the empty Colosseum under a full moon. The sand is silver. The tiers of seating rise like cliffs around you, but there's no one watching. Just you and the enormous bowl of stone, breathing together in the night. The trapdoors are closed. The cages are silent. Even the ghosts have gone to rest. You walk the perimeter slowly, your footsteps leaving prints that the next day's raking will erase. And somehow, in this dream, you understand that this place is not your enemy, it's just a stage. The performance matters less than the fact that you're still here to give it. The moon climbs higher. The city dreams around the Colosseum. And in your cell, your breathing slows and deepens. Your muscles release their tension. The day's violence recedes into memory, joining all the other memories that fighters carry. The accumulated weight of survival that eventually becomes too heavy or, if you're lucky, becomes wisdom. You wouldn't survive a day in the Colosseum. Not really. No one does. Everyone who enters that arena dies a little, gives up a piece of themselves to the sand and the crowd and the relentless machinery of spectacle. What walks out is someone different, shaped by violence and fear, and the strange grace of being chosen to continue. You learn to carry that. You learn to wake each morning and put on the armor again, lift the weapons again, step onto the platform that carries you up toward the light. Because the alternative is to surrender, and surrender in this place means erasure. So you fight, and sometimes you win, and sometimes winning means nothing more than permission to do it all again tomorrow. The stars wheel overhead. The night grows deep and still. And somewhere between the memory of today's fight and the inevitability of tomorrow's training, you finally let go. You sink into sleep that claims you completely, pulls you down into darkness where there are no crowds, no weapons, no sand stained, dark with what can't be washed away. Just silence, just rest, just the quiet knowledge that you survived today. And for now, that has to be enough. The Colosseum stands empty under the stars, its stones still warm from the day's sun. Soon, dawn will come. Soon, the gates will open again. Soon, the machinery of death and glory will turn once more. But not yet. Not for a few more hours. For now, there is only this. The breath moving in and out of your lungs. The slow beat of your heart. The merciful oblivion of sleep in a place where tomorrow is never promised but somehow, against all odds, keeps arriving anyway.